Good. Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for coming out to the Home Care 101 presentation sponsored by Senior Community Services. We have a breadth of information available for you today. You'll have the opportunity to ask questions towards the end of the presentation. So, take it all in, take notes, and hopefully, you'll learn something, and you got all these experts here. So take advantage of that. And I'll turn it over to Ms. Daniel.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you're all coming. We will be doing a little bit of musical chairs so that this can be live streamed. Be patient with us and we'll try to talk loud enough for everyone to hear. Okay. I'm down at Breslin. I know many of you know me, but if not, I have been attorney many years practicing in the area of elder law, estate administration, and my office is just down the road here. I've lost count how many years. I know it's more than 40 years there. And just about 9 months ago, things changed and we went from Papano and Breslin. So we're now Breslin, Murphy, and Roberts. And we have with us today, a little later, my daughter, Christina Roberts, to talk. We're also fortunate. We have Elaine Lawley, who is with COSA and will give us an overview of the services we can obtain through COSA. We'll go into home care, and Tom Carroll at that point, we will have Valerie Simone Spira, who is the supervisor of assessments at the County Office on Aging. And if we don't have time, she's available to answer questions that you have. And I do plan to do something more extensive, if Valerie will agree, in the fall when we offer programs. So we're going to concentrate on that to do it properly. So moving on, I would like to turn it over to Elaine and to let us know that overview of COSA services.
Where do I need to stand?
You got to be right here. You can't stand. I'm going to change the hot seat. It's musical chairs. You have to sit here. Sit.
Good afternoon. I'm happy to be with you here today to speak about COSA's programs and services. COSA stands for the County Office of Services for the Aging. We've been in existence since 1975, and surprisingly, some people don't know that we exist. We are located in Eddystone in the Baldwin Towers, right near the Walmart and the ShopRite. A little bit of background, we are what is called a AAA, an Area Agency on Aging. There are many AAAs across the state. We are the AAA for Delaware County. In that regard, we answer to the Pennsylvania Department of Aging, but we're also a county office, so we answer to Delaware County Council. Most of our funding comes from federal or state funds, including and especially the Pennsylvania Lottery. I will say again, when they say the Pennsylvania Lottery helps seniors, it really does. Our primary focus is to help older persons in the county remain in their home as long as possible, even when eligible for nursing home care through the provision of home and community-based services, which will be discussed today. Services are available to county residents 60 and older, but we also want to be an information resource for anyone that has any aging question, regardless of age or income. We work with other county agencies, such as the District Attorney's Office, and we contract with providers to administrate some of our programs, such as Senior Community Services. We have programs for every level of independence, people who need assistance in their home, to people who are looking for employment opportunities or volunteer opportunities. Over at the table, there was a packet that says Introduction to COSA's Programs and Services. If you didn't grab one, please grab it before you leave. Much of what I'm discussing now is included in that packet, as well as all of our contact information, phone number, address, email, and website. Assessment services are free. Anyone that thinks they may need in-home services can give our office a call and say you'd like to make a referral for yourself or for someone else to see what it is you may be eligible for. And we will have an assessor come out for free to see what your functional needs are and what programs you might be eligible for. Often we get calls saying, what am I eligible for? What am I entitled to? It's what do you need? Everyone doesn't need the same thing. Someone might need help in their home with personal care, bathing, dressing, grooming. Someone might need a phone number for Social Security because they lost their card, some help with Medicare questions. All of our programs are listed in the book. And like I said, every level of independence, people who need help in their home to people who are looking for volunteer opportunities or are able to go to a senior center. Some of the other programs that are mentioned in that book, one is the ADRC, which is the Pennsylvania Link to Aging and Disability Resources. The ADRC links seniors and adults with disabilities to supports and services through link partners to assist individuals to be as independent as possible. We do have a ADRC coordinator in our office, so that might be an additional resource for someone who has a disability. Adult day services are centers that provide supervised care in the daytime hours in a supportive, safe, and structured environment. Many times this is for people who have dementia or Alzheimer's to go in during the day. We have a caregiver support program through Senior Community Services that can provide some financial reimbursement for caregiving expenses, including grandparents raising grandchildren. We work with the Delaware County Victim Assistance Center, assisting those who have been a victim of a crime in Delaware County. They provide counseling, medical, and court accompaniment, assistance with filing state crime victims compensation claims, and referrals to community services, and hopefully you'll never need that. We have something called the Domiciliary Care Program. It assists individuals incapable of living alone find living arrangements which are supportive and home-like. You would live in a person's home, a dom care provider. You would be a dom care consumer, and you would be paying a certain amount of money to live there in their home. Gateway is a program that targets older adults with behavioral health issues and helps connect them with appropriate resources. Home delivered meals are nutritious meals for homebound adults. Anyone that feels they need home delivered meals would call and let us know that you need those or are interested in getting home delivered meals, and an assessment would be set up for you. Legal services, we contact with legal aid to provide legal representation for non-criminal and nonprofit cases such as bankruptcy, housing, and benefits and rights. The PA Medi program, formerly called a PRIZE, is a free health insurance program for Medicare, helping individuals age 60 and older with Medicare concerns, supplemental insurance, savings programs, help filing appeals. PA Medi is very popular during open enrollment, but they are available year-round. Protective Services receives reports of abuse, neglect, exploitation, and abandonment of seniors. If you feel that there is a senior that is being abused, neglected, exploited, you can call our office 24 hours a day and you can remain anonymous. And then we will have a protective services investigate the claim. We have 8 sponsored senior centers in the county. They have nutritious meals, educational presentations, volunteer opportunities, fitness classes, art classes, and much more. And transportation is contracted with Community Transit. It's a shared ride program. You can get 85% reduction in the customary fare. I don't know what the customary fare is, but you can call Community Transit or our office and we will connect you. Some of the volunteer opportunities that I started to discuss. We have an ombudsman program, which advocates for the rights of those living in long-term care facilities. If a resident in one of those facilities feels that their rights are being violated against, they would call our ombudsman, and our ombudsman would go out and speak with the resident and advocate on their behalf to resolve the issue. And the ombudsman program is always looking for volunteers. It is a commitment. There's some training involved. And if you're interested in becoming an ombudsman, just give us a call. And I think I do have a little brochure over there about the ombudsman program. Health and wellness. We have some health and wellness programs, managing diabetes, managing chronic pain. They were virtual during COVID. She is now getting back out into the public to do these. I think one of the last ones that she did was at the Redwood Center in Upland Park. She's also looking for volunteers, and there's also a booklet over there about all of the programs, the health and wellness programs. And if you're interested in any of those, finding out where they are, where they're being offered, you can call Ellen Williams. Her number is in that booklet. What else did I forget? Foster grandparents. Anyone who loves children can volunteer in daycare centers, Head Start centers, or elementary school with elementary school students, tutoring and mentoring children who are at risk. There are certain requirements, and you would be placed in one of the schools. You would be assigned children, and you do receive a tax-free stipend. And for what I was told yesterday, it does not count as income. So it does, if you're eligible for any other benefits, it does not count as towards income. But foster grandparents are always looking for people who love to be with kids to make a difference in their lives, and into one of those types of educational settings. I think that was it. Does anybody have any questions other than the home care, which is the primary topic of today? Does anyone have a question about COSA? Or yes?
Are you aware if they offer the same services in Delaware as well?
There are AAAs in Delaware, and if you call our office, we can give you the one for what area you're looking for. I don't know how extensive or what they offer, but they are called area agencies on aging for that state as well as for that county probably. And we do have numbers at the office, and if you have that, our number is 490-1300. It's on the front of the programs, and if you give our office a call and just say you'd like, if you know the county, that would be helpful. Like if it was Wilmington or Newark. Or Delaware. Okay. But you can call and ask for the area agency on aging for Bear, Delaware.
It's Sussex.
Sussex.
And Elaine, you pointed something out that I want to stress. You're not going to be given a quiz on what Elaine just covered. But when you have a question about anything, you can call that 610-490-1300. They have a large information and referral resource to help point you in the right direction.
Yep.
Whether it's about COSA services or something else.
If it's something that we don't have in our office, we do have, as Dana said, a large resource base. We can connect you, give you a website, give you a phone number, give you a referral to another agency. So we want to be known as the go-to agency for any question regarding aging. So you may have seen our ads on buses, bus shelters. We have a television commercial, a radio commercial. We're really trying to get the word out that we are here for you and your families.
And it's not just for poor elderly persons. I mean, some of their programs have a financial eligibility component, but they have other programs available for those of any income or for those in between. Elaine mentioned the caregiver support program, which Senior Community Services they contract with Senior Community Services to provide that. And even though there is, for many components of financial eligibility, no matter what your income or resources, you will be, if you want, a care manager assigned to you who can help you find answers. And this is so important when you're trying to take care of someone else, because the systems we have out there are nearly impossible to navigate, at least on your own. So I want to
I
stress.
did just have one quick question. I know you guys are probably as busy or more post-COVID. What is a approximate time we could tell clients or people that are gonna call that they would wait for an assessment?
Generally, you can get an assessment within the day or the week. So if they're calling in to get an assessment, it's usually good to know if you want it fairly quickly. But yeah, ours, we try to schedule within a few days at the very least.
Okay, for those, when you have someone you're taking care of, or for yourself, and you're just wondering what help is available, one of the first steps is to have an assessor from COSA to come out. And Valerie is in charge of those assessors, and she, answered, they worked really hard to get someone out, if not within a day, within a couple days. Actually, for some of the programs, there's a requirement they do it within a certain period of time. We don't need to go into that detail, but they're going to do their darndest. And if that doesn't happen for some reason, then you just call back, Okay. So
There's multiple ways to contact COSA. Our phone number is 610-490-1300. We are open Monday to Friday, 8:30 to 4:30, except on holidays, county holidays. You can walk in. Our email is on the front page of that booklet over there. It's cosa@co.delaware.pa.us. Our website is also listed. If you go to our website, at the top, there's a button that says Contact Us. You can fill out an inquiry through that, as well as apply for services, where you could actually complete a referral for yourself or someone else. If you're interested in services, you can complete the referral and it comes right through the computer. Our staff will get it and then they will call you to make the appointment for the assessment. So you can actually complete the referral online and it can be retrieved right from our system and someone will call you. So there's multiple ways to contact COSA. Thank you.
Thanks, Elaine. Okay, going to shift gears from the county to Tom Carroll. Want to come on up? I'll put him in the hot seat now. And talk about in-home health.
All right, I'm driving now. Everybody buckle up. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Appreciate the opportunity to be with you and talk about home care. On the handout here, the first one says just what is in-home care. So, that sounds like a no-brainer. It's care provided in the home, but in reality, it's much more sometimes confusing than just that. What I like to kind of try to simplify it for people is that in the world of home care, outside of family caregivers or family rallying around somebody that needs help, when you're talking about an agency, there's usually two models or two agency models. So one is called skilled care, and most people are familiar when they hear the word home care. That's usually what they associate is what is typically referred to as skilled care. And skilled home care is the kind of care when somebody's discharged from the hospital or rehab and a visiting nurse comes out. They might need some physical therapy and occupational therapy, sometimes speech therapy. Sometimes there's a nurse educator that will help with a newly diagnosed diabetic who needs education on insulin injections and monitoring their blood sugar. In general, skilled services are a couple things. One is that's usually covered by Medicare or your commercial insurance. And the goal of skilled care is usually short term. usually under 3 months, and in most cases even less than that. So the goal is for the person to get back to their baseline of where they were before hospitalization or rehab. So that is typically, if you ever hear, skilled care, what does that mean? That pretty much is in a nutshell what it does mean. Our agency, and I'm the owner of what's called a non-medical or non-skilled home care agency. And what that is more familiar with the type of care that many of us as family caregivers are providing to our loved ones. It's kind of caregiving 101 in the sense, maybe they're not necessarily bedbound or totally dependent on others for care. They just need a little assistance on a day-to-day basis to get up and moving and to make sure that their quality of care and their life is good. So some of the things that a non-medical home care agency provides, we divide it up basically into two umbrellas. One is personal care assistance, and the other is home support. So personal care assistance is basically anything a person might need some assistance with from the moment they wake up to get out of bed. So you're talking showering, assistance with personal care, nutritional needs, we clump into the personal care, medication minders, dressing, those type of things that fall under personal care assistance. The home support are the other kind of things that include laundry, cleaning up the bathroom after you do personal care, sometimes meal prep, those kind of things, folding laundry, helping put it away. We consider also transportation as an extension of the home support services. That can be assisting somebody to a medical appointment or doing grocery shopping, assisting them, taking them out to lunch, companionship, those type of things. So typically those services are intended to be more long-term. The need is not necessarily going to go away, and those services oftentimes stay in place indefinitely. We have clients that have been with us for almost 20 years. When looking at a home care agency, and this would also go for a skilled agency or a non-medical thing, most people, when they are the recipient of home care, they didn't draw it up this way or didn't imagine that they would someday be in a position where they would need strangers or people coming, non-family members coming from the outside into their home and providing some level of assistance to them to get, either back on their feet or to be able to live in the community. So we recognize what we do is highly intrusive. And when we hire people, we try to hire people that we would feel comfortable providing care to our own family members. And part of our orientation is that we hammer what I just said to our people is that, we are guests in our client's home. And yes, you're helping them out and they're very appreciative and need the kind of help that you're providing, but ultimately you're a guest in their house and you need to act accordingly. So some things you can look at for is a length of time they've been with the agency, how long have they been an aide, a caregiver, how long they've been doing that work. It's not a deal breaker if you got somebody who's fresh and brand new, but somebody that's been doing this for a good period of time probably has a good sense as far as what they're doing and the impact and the intrusion that it often our clients feel. From the agency standpoint, you want to make sure what type of supervision do they provide when the person comes into the home, or they just once they're done that they never talk to anybody again. So a good agency will have a mechanism for clients and families to report back to a manager. We use nurses in our facility that oversee the care going on, and all of our clients have a direct line of communication with the nurse that's managing that case. So if things go good, we want to hear about them. If things go bad, want to hear about them. So what does the agency have in place in regards to provide supervision and to address problems when and if they go awry? And that's a good question to ask when you're interviewing a home care agency. Couple other things, the hiring practice is, how do you hire your people? What type of training and orientation do they get? We've been in business for 20 years, and when we first started out, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania didn't even license our type of agencies. In 2009, they started licensing, and they laid down minimum criteria for us to hire caregivers. Most of the good agencies back then were already surpassing what licensure today requires, but some of the good things that are necessary is criminal background checks. A lot of times agencies will say, yeah, we do criminal background checks. I'm not sure if I did a presentation a few years ago with district attorney and the elder fraud unit, and they said a statistic that's very kind of scary. They said that about 60 to 70% of the criminal background checks that agencies like us run are going to come back either not accurate or inconclusive, which is kind of scary. And there's a whole reason for that. Sometimes it's cases haven't been adjudicated and the actual charge or whatever that the person is hasn't been filed and logged yet. So in addition to like the criminal background check, you want to ask, what type of reference checks did they get? What other criminal background checks? Anybody that works for us that hasn't lived in the Commonwealth for 2 years, they have to get an FBI check, and that's a fingerprint check. So a lot of agencies don't do that or adhere, or they don't even know that that's a regulation of that. So, what type of screening process do they do for their caregivers prior to offering them a job is another. And then one other thing to touch on is in our world, there's what's known as agencies and registries. So an agency, Home Helpers, and is an agency that employs their people. So we have over 200 caregivers, and they get W-2s, they're supervised, we pay them biweekly, we offer benefits, that whole thing. And they're insured under our workers' comp and our liability policy. The other type of agency is what's called a registry, and this is highlighted in the handout that you got. And a registry sometimes can look and feel like an agency that employs people, but in reality, a registry is more like a staffing agency. They have a pool of people that are willing to do this type of work that I described, and they basically try to find clients who need that type of help, and then they'll place that person in with the client. But at that moment, the employer and employee relationship isn't between that registry, it's between the client and the caregiver. So a lot of times people unknowingly become an accidental employer, where they're actually responsible for everything an employer like us would be responsible for, which includes payroll taxes and stuff like that. A lot of registries, they say their people are insured and bonded, but if you're talking with the registry and the caregiver, you would want to say, can I see your declaration page? In the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, somebody can say they're insured and bonded and have a policy for $5,000 or even $1,000. And that covers a work-related injury or damage to the home, but it's $1,000. So if somebody is cooking eggs and gets distracted because Mrs. Jones needs some help going to the bathroom and causes extensive damage to the kitchen, and they're insured and bonded for $1,000, that's not going to cover the cost to repair that damage, and then the client has to put an additional claim in on their homeowner's insurance. So there's a lot of little things like that people don't know, because many times registries, when people are calling around and for price shopping, they'll call our agency, hey, how much are you an hour? And the way I handle that is like, listen, if you're looking for the cheapest provider, I can tell you the 3 cheapest Delaware County providers. And I go, but here's what you need to know. The reason that they're cheaper is because their people are not employees of the agency. They don't incur the cost and expense that an employer does, and they pass it on unknowingly to you. So that's a major pitfall. There are some really good registries out there, but ultimately you have to do your own homework and make sure that things are legit and that things like liability insurance and bonding is up to snuff and adequate for what could possibly go wrong.
Tom, how do you and your staff handle the obstinate patient who says they don't need the help? Person goes out and, you know, they're not even allowed into the house, or they walk in and the poor wife is there needing help and the husband's saying, get rid of her, you know, or something along those lines.
So this is a common occurrence. Usually we're in the middle between, I'll just say, I always pick on the daughter. We'll pick on the son this time. The son's perception of what mom or dad might need on a daily basis versus what the client or the patient perceives they need. So a lot of times the initial call will come from the son or daughter, and they'll say, listen, I want a caregiver Monday through Friday, 8 hours a day to help my mom. And from that's an easy case for us. 40-hour-a-week case, 8 hours a day, one client, we could staff that probably in about 3 minutes. But the reality is, if we go out and do an in-home assessment, which all of our clients, we don't start care until a nurse and a manager go out and do an in-home assessment. In that assessment, we can tell where reality is between what the son wants and what the patient perceives they need. And in our experience of 20 years, it's always been better to try to find a happy medium, because if we start with 8 hours, that we know we're going to get a call within 2 or 3 days. Hey, the caregiver is sent out, wonderful person, but my mom don't like her. We're going to just, she wins, I give up. So we try to have a conversation and a dialogue with both parties, the son and the patient, and say, do you really think she needs 8 hours? And what are the pain points for you? And can we build a care plan around that so that she feels the help that she's getting is just enough? It might not be, peace of mind 100% for you while you're at work. But there's other things that we can build into that to, if his concern is really more supervision, and if she falls while I'm at work, what can I do? And that's where we talk about other things like the PERS, help I fall and I can't get up button. So maybe we only have a caregiver that comes in the morning for a few hours and helps with personal care, gets her something to eat, and then they piggyback that with one of those emergency buttons or a fall sensor or something like that. That kind of scenario, that turns into a patient that's going to be with us for a longer time than stifling them with what they perceive to be too much care and too many hours.
So you're familiar with showtimers?
Showtimers.
Showtimers.
Oh, okay. I'm familiar with Showtime, the network. And
Showtimers are dementia patients who you will talk to and say there's nothing wrong with them.
Yes. Yep.
Because they're showtimers. They
Yes.
can do that for a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
And that could be the length of your interview.
Yep. Yeah. So that's why the assessment we do is it's multifactorial. We're going to gather as much information, not just from the patient, the family, in cases where they give us permission to talk to any treating physicians or treating teams, including physical therapy, people that have known and have interacted with them for much longer than our assessment. So our assessment, we try to include and we gather as much information as possible. Our care plans that we have as an agency, and I've been at this a long time, and I can tell you that our care plans are much more thorough and inclusive than any other provider that I'm aware of. Most people and agencies will put the demographics down on a care plan, and a caregiver that's supposed to go into that home and provide some type of care has no clue what the needs of the individual are, because it just has name, address, and maybe a date of birth. Our care plans are also very fluid, where we're constantly updating them. So it's not something that we do at the start of care and then, it stays like that. If we know there was change in medical status or mental status, we're updating those care plans continuously, so that anybody that reads that would have a good snapshot of what this person's needs and issues are, and what I need to be able to do to help them out.
Thanks, Tom.
Uh-huh.
That's great.
All right, I'm done driving. Do I got to put this in drive or?
Yeah, I'm going to change the driver to, we'll call Mike Lynch over, because one of the questions, or the big question, is how are you going to pay for any of this? Let's assume you agree, I want to get the care started. And one great resource is the Veterans Administration. So
Thank you. Again, my name is Mike Lynch. I am not affiliated with the VA. I don't work for the VA, but I am a veteran, and I've gone through the VA process. So are any veterans here? Okay, thank you for your service. Anybody Army? All right. Oh, we're 3 for 3. All right. Anybody married to a veteran? All right. So this, even if nobody put their hands up, the reason that I'm involved with this is because there's such a knowledge gap between veterans and services that, frankly, the government's going to pay for whether they're used or not. So I feel, especially with the post-World War II generation, the Korean vets, the Vietnam vets, those are veterans that, I served for 8 years on active duty. And the VA now is as good as it is because of those prior veterans who didn't have the services. So I feel obligated to help connect people. Sort of a passion project of mine, but again, I'm not an attorney. You have the best attorney in the state sitting right next to me, who actually helped a very close client of mine, or family member / client, navigate this system. So start there. I don't know that you have the slides in front of you. No? Okay. But so I'm going to try to just talk through this without using visuals.
let me just say, this has been a communication gap. It is available if you're watching online. I didn't realize we weren't going to have it available. And I was planning to print out the slides, and today our copier ran out of toner, and the cartridge hasn't yet arrived that was supposed to be for replacement. So I was able to copy the one, and Mike got cheated on the other.
As the Army guy, I should have been prepared.
No.
And I failed to do that.
I told you I would do it.
No. So the VA offers services, and like I said, somewhat tongue in cheek, they're going to pay for them whether you use them or not. We as veterans are a proud community. We tend to sort of suck it up and deal as we've kind of grown into our military careers. So there's sometimes there can be a reluctance for a veteran to apply for benefits and services because they think that they're going to take it away from somebody else. And I'm here to tell you that that's not the case. The VA is going to spend, I think it's almost $250 billion, whether you want the services or not. So as we kind of go through this, think about ways that you yourself could benefit from services. Family member, spouse, friend, there are veterans all over, and unfortunately, very few of them are tapping into it. So there's medical benefits and non-medical benefits. We're going to talk briefly about both because the theme of this is long-term care. And some of the non-medical benefits, particularly the financial aspects, help offset some of the medical benefits. Just some quick terminology too. You're going to hear, I'll mention a service-connected disability. Anything that is service-connected is an injury, illness, annoyance that was either due to your time in the service or aggravated during your time in service. So if you joined the service and you had arthritis in your knees, and that was declared, but it got worse during your time, that's still considered service connected, okay? Don't ask me about hearing aids. Don't ask me about hearing loss. The Veterans Administration is kind of, I think some folks are grandfathered in, but I can't hear a thing, and they're not going to pay for mine. So it depends on when you served. The Bible for veterans is or call it your Magna Carta, or your 10 Commandments. That's your DD 214, Department of Defense Form 214. That's the most important document that any veteran can possess. That's a one-page proof and summary of a veteran's service record. It has your assignments, your awards, your overseas tours, and that's sort of the ticket to access a lot of these programs. Okay, if you don't have your DD 214, or if you lost it, there are ways to get that back. The National Archives in St. Louis is a repository of all military records. They did have a fire back in 1973. So if you were discharged before 1960 in the Army, they probably lost your stuff. But there are ways to recoup that and regenerate. And if you've gone through that experience, God bless you. Trying to keep track of the who's and the where's, that would be incredible. Yes, ma'am.
Did it have another number earlier on? Because when I was trying to get that from my father, his form was not DD 214, it was another number.
Was it a World War II veteran, ma'am?
Yes.
Okay. The DD 214 is the successor form for the World War II generation. The DD World War II veterans, correct. They have discharge paperwork that's very similar, but it's not called, the nomenclature changed just as a function of time. But yep. So some of the medical services that the VA provides, everyone's probably familiar with the Veterans Hospital in Philadelphia, the Coatesville Hospital, which is closing from what I understand down the road. Lebanon County, if you've anybody out in Lebanon County, they have a fantastic Veterans Hospital out there. But they also offer a lot of the same services, or pay for some of the same services that Tom has spoken about, that Dana would talk about in terms of in-home care, both skilled and unskilled, adult daycare, dementia care, prescription plans, as well as primary care medical. There's a clinic out in Newtown Square on Westchester Pike that's an outpatient clinic. So if you apply for veterans medical, which I'll get into that, how to do that, you can see a doctor. You can get your prescriptions filled all through the VA. So on the non-medical side, there's a whole gamut of services available, everything from your home mortgage to a pension. And this is independent of whatever military pension you may receive, okay? The Department of, and I should have led with this, the Department of Defense, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, is not the VA. Two totally separate things, okay? So the DOD, the Pentagon, does not fund this. It's a separate entity. So the financial pensions and benefits that the VA offers are sometimes in lieu of or sometimes on top of whatever retiree pension you may receive already. So who qualifies and how do you get it? Generally, most veterans are qualified for at least medical. You have to have a discharge that's anything other than dishonorable. If you have an administrative discharge, a good conduct, or a general discharge, honorable discharge, of course, and you served within certain time periods, then you qualify. So anytime a veteran served in a period of war, and those are congressionally mandated periods of war, but generally speaking, they're pretty broad. So if you served sometime around World War II, sometime around the Korean conflict or Vietnam, or sometime around the Persian Gulf War, the first one, and you have over 90 days, then you're generally qualified.
Mike, am I correct that you must serve during wartime?
You don't need to go to war.
No, but you had to be serving.
Yes, ma'am. Yes. And those are,
1955 doesn't fall.
I think the armistice was in 53, right? And then they picked it up again in probably the 60s for Vietnam, right?
And I will say in the PowerPoint that I copied, there is an appendix at the back, Appendix C. Anyway, there is the period of war, that chart, and the address for the clinic in Newtown Square. So towards the back, the very end of the PowerPoint, they do have the periods of war and some of the info. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like there's certainly a gap between 55 and 64.
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
So I'm sorry to hear that. Yes, ma'am.
Does this include also the Army reservists who served during Vietnam?
If you're activated in a non-training environment for 90 days or greater, then yes. Because that's before 1980, which was the cutoff. But activation for training doesn't count. But 90 days of active service during that Vietnam era, then yes, ma'am.
There's another question.
Yes, ma'am.
Would it include a widow of a Korean veteran? Would they get service at any time?
Yes.
The question was, can the widow of a Korean vet get service? And the answer, yes.
Yes. I'm assuming that's not you. That's probably someone related to you, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Same one that lives in Delaware.
Okay. Again, I just highlight the three different sort of types of inpatient care. We have the hospitals, which we're blessed to have as many as we do in this area: Lebanon, Philadelphia, and Coatesville for now until they consolidate. Then you have state veterans homes. State veterans homes are run by the State Department of Veterans Administration, and there's one up in Northeast Philadelphia. And finally, there's contracted nursing homes that are not affiliated they're not owned by any governmental agency. They're simply contracted out by the VA to provide those services. So applying for VA healthcare. Okay, so this would be, we've already sort of gone through the eligibility maze of when did you serve, how long did you serve. Applying for it, you can do it one of three ways. You can mail in a form, you can hand in a form, or you can email a form. Okay, and that form is called 1010EZ. What does the EZ stand for? It's anything but. It's anything but, right? If anyone's filled one of those, I have one here, and it's 5 pages of fine print. That's why you get the attorney. But it's tough. The bottom line is, if you're a veteran and you fall within one of those time periods, getting enrolled in the VA medical system is a crucial first step. You don't have to use it. You don't have to use it right now. You could still be gainfully employed. You don't even have to be retired yet, or not even on Medicare yet or Medicaid. But just applying for it and becoming enrolled in the VA medical system is the first step for a lot of long-term care services that they do offer. Okay, so that's the EZ form. to do that. Whether or not there's a copay for some of these services depends on your income. In most cases, your long-term care services, it's a separate application. So primary care, outpatient care, think of, Medicare Part A and Part B, right? You can sort of get those equivalents through one sort of application. And then anything home-based, cognitive-based, or any specialty care, there's a separate application process for that. There's a financial component to that. This is where the trick comes in. If you've ever heard attorneys speak about Medicaid planning, the same type of concept applies for VA planning. Does anybody, quizzing the group, make sure they listen to you. What's the Medicaid look back period?
5 years.
There you go. So 5 years, when you're applying to Medicaid, they'll look back at your tax returns and your assets over the previous 5 years. For the VA, it's only 3 years, which I've found interesting. They're both government programs, but 3 years. So there's an income limit and an asset limit to some of the long-term care programs that are available. And frankly, there's so much data here, and I don't want to monopolize the time. I'll be sort of hanging out at the end if you have questions, but I did want to touch on the veterans pension and the veterans aid and assistance allowance. These are, again, income-based programs that veterans with minimal resources or low resources, regardless of how long they served, as long as you qualify, as long as you're enrolled in VA medical, everyone thinks that pensions come after 20 years, right? But if you're a low-income veteran, as long as you serve those 90 days during a period of war, you could qualify for a monthly pension. Any other outside income that you might have counts against that. But I mean, this is why it breaks my heart to see any homeless veteran asking for money on the street, because there are pensions and resources available for that person. So no veteran in this country needs to be destitute. There are pensions available, but tying into them and tapping into them is sometimes the challenge. There's the other component of that.
Mike, what I interrupt. One of the excellent things about the VA pension program, even though it's related to income, there's an offset by your unreimbursed medical expenses. And a medical expense could be the cost of assisted living or home health aides. So many people I see on the surface, if you look at gross income, they wouldn't qualify.
Mm-hmm.
But when you take 95% of these unreimbursed medical expenses, then they do qualify.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike the Medicaid program that doesn't allow that, at least not for the in-home programs. So
Yeah,
I didn't
thank
mean to
you.
butt in,
No,
but I
that's
just.
a very good
it's
point. I'm
big
thinking
difference.
about the look back period and
Yeah,
missing the
yeah,
huge point,
it's
the
Mhm.
800-pound gorilla is that, yeah, most of your expenses at that point would be non-reimbursable. The aid and attendance benefit is if you qualify for the pension based on your income and based on an assessment, you require the assistance of another person for those activities of daily living, then you can get an increased monthly allowance from the VA to help pay for some of that in-home care. Okay. Just to throw some numbers around, I mean, this could be upwards of $2,000 a month. It varies if you're married versus non-married. It varies if you simply get the pension, which I think is $14,000 a year, versus the aid and attendance addition to that could get you up to, like I said, almost $2,000 a month, slightly over $2,000 a month. Okay. Applying for that is a separate application process. So first we start with enrolling in VA medical. Enrolling in VA medical is the 10-10 easy. And then you'll, at that point, be assigned a case manager who that person, along with any outside help you might have, whether that be a veteran service officer or an attorney, can sort of cater your benefits to whatever your needs happen to be. The last thing I'm going to talk about are death allowances. So the VA will give survivors a death allowance for burial services or cremation services. The amount varies. If it's a service-related death, meaning something that the veteran had been struggling with since the time of service or was brought on by service, then the amount for that is, I think, $2,000. If it's non-service related, then it's significantly less than that. There's another amount if they die in a VA hospital, but the point is you have 2 years from the death of the veteran to apply for your funeral expense reimbursement or cremation, or there's also a headstone benefit of a few $100. So don't let that time go without applying for it. Yes, ma'am. They can. I don't know who actually fills out the forms. I would imagine it's on the
Do you want me to
survivor.
answer that?
Yeah, sure.
I just went through that. There's a letter that your funeral director, and it's on the VA website. I was able to get my grandmother $1,400. And so even though my grandfather died of Alzheimer's, it was ultimately related to his service in the Korean War. But that is where when Mike said the limit, we got towards the upper end of that limit because he didn't die in wartime. So for the funeral director, what we requested was what they paid for. My grandfather died in Chester County, but we're originally from Philadelphia. So my grandfather was buried just outside of Philadelphia in Bucks. The cost of transporting his body from Chester County to the funeral home in Philadelphia. And then for his service, the cost of transporting his body from Philadelphia to Bucks County. The other things included, it won't include flowers. It won't include the minister fee or things like that. But the funeral director broke down the fees and then signed off that they, no one else had contributed to that it was my grandparents prepaid. 6 days later, my grandmother had a check. And we did that online. So that was probably the easiest process because we're still working on getting her the pension that he had received up until his death. But if you go on the VA website and just type in funeral reimbursement, it's literally 4 pages on the website. Very, very simple.
Yeah, I think I made that mistake because I assumed the funeral director would help me with that, and they never brought it up.
I dictated the letter, that I will tell you. And I dictated the letter, and then you upload the death certificate, the funeral bill, even though it was reiterated in the letter, and the letter from the funeral home. And that's how my grandma got her check. Sorry to interrupt, Mike.
That's a beautiful segue into resources, because you're not going to remember what I said because there's a lot and I ramble. But there are people in the community who are trained at this, who you have to be an accredited representative for the VA. It's a training process that people go through. If anyone goes to a American Legion post or a VFW or a Marine Corps League post, if they don't know who it is, there is somebody who is blessed off by the VA to help apply for services. Then accredited representatives, did you have to go through a vetting process through the VA?
Yes.
Yeah, there's a whole process that attorneys have to go through. So if you don't know the answer, and certainly your funeral home doesn't know the answer, there's folks out there who can help. And so that granddaughters don't have to do all of the legwork themselves trying to navigate in the blind, right?
Well, the granddaughters know a good attorney.
Wow, yeah, it's true.
And AmVets is also very helpful.
Yep.
They're the ones helping us with the pension.
So that's it for me.
Thank you, Mike.
All right.
What I will do with Mike's PowerPoint. I will have copies available next week. So if someone wants to stop at our office on Edgemont Avenue to get it, give us till, well, maybe Wednesday. It'd be good to call first, but we'll make that available.
Also, the PowerPoint's on our Facebook page, if anybody.
Oh,
Facebook. Yeah.
good point. It's on our Facebook page. Went ahead. Now we will switch to what does Medicare provide in terms of health?
Yeah, I was thinking about, we can do that, it's in the slide, I don't know whether we're better going to a Q&A, I don't know, it's already 10.
Well, let's,
All right, well, I can do it briefly and then
yeah, because
talk
it
more
is,
if no one has
this,
questions.
if we go back to our PowerPoint, the Medicare section is in there.
Yeah,
I know
okay.
you want to get out of.
No, listen, it was a hot seat full of really good people. No, I just noticed a couple people had to leave and I wanted to make sure we had time for question and answer. You come to all of them, don't you? You do, yeah. Anyway, there was just a couple things I wanted to highlight, but it's all in more detail in the slide. If anybody wants to talk more about it by phone or after, I'm happy to do that. I think the first thing we wanted to highlight in this section was really, what does Medicare cover? And it seems kind of self-explanatory, but it's not. But it needs to be a Medicare approved facility. And I think sometimes even, I put in a quick Google search and a lot of facilities come up and they're not Medicare approved. So I think one of the things in terms of doing our research and our homework is making sure we know, does this agency accept Medicare or does it not? And so kind of making sure that that is part of our immediate checklist if you're looking for Medicare to pay for your care. Right?
It's number one.
Number one. And then, kind of skipping ahead to the other things we think are important is for Medicare to pay for in-home care, it's really a 4-part test. And we look at it as 4 parts. And the first part is whether or not a physician signed or would sign a care plan certifying it's a medical necessity. So part of that is also having a good relationship with your doctor so that you're able to ask him to sign a care plan, that they're available to review the care plan, that there's somebody you can reach out to. But that's step one is there somebody who would sign that care plan?
And I would say maybe Tom and Kim might correct me that most of your agencies that are Medicare approved will know that the care plan has to be signed off by the doctor. And I mean, that's just part of their, how they proceed. I mean,
and the care plan can't, well, it has to say it's a medical necessity. So we have to look for making sure that the language of the care plan does say that as well. Okay, the second thing is the patient must be homebound. And some of this seems sort of self-explanatory, but that is important. The patient needs to be homebound. That either the patient needs skilled nursing care on an intermittent basis or skilled therapy, such as some of the therapies that Tom talked about in his presentation. And then the fourth part is making sure the care is provided by an arranged with a Medicare certified provider. And that's similar to the first one, really. It's our fourth point, but it's sort of a repeat. Yeah, exactly. And then the last thing that I've actually come across more recently in the last few months, and I think it's important because I think this is just incorrectly communicated to clients, is we get calls, usually in a panic from kids, that they're told that the Medicare is no longer going to cover their parents, the home care they're receiving, because they think that the rule is different than what it is. So the test is, and I'm going to read it so I don't mess it up, it's not whether the patient is improving. So what's being miscommunicated is that no longer can they receive the care because they're not getting better. But that's actually not the test. The test is whether they're needed to ensure maintaining the status of the patient or making sure that they're preventing a decline. So it's a little bit confusing, but they don't have to get better. They just need to show that the care is needed to make sure they don't get worse or that they stay the same. And so for a lot of people, that is a big distinction and difference in the communication. So we've had clients and I've sent them the various rules so that they can at least go into these meetings equipped with knowing what that standard is, so they can best advocate for their parent if we're not there. Because they don't really want to see lawyers at those meetings. But it is important to be able to properly communicate why the care should continue for your parent. So.
Oh, any questions? Probably your information overload. Okay.
Happy to give up the hot seat. Right?
Do you want us to get into Medicaid at
Oh, I
all?
think Kim has
Oh,
a
I'm
question.
sorry.
Yeah.
So if we have a client whose husband was in service, they're trying to get her connected to the benefits, does she have to be connected medically to the VA?
So a 1010 is a role, even if she has, even if she's not using it, that's the first plan.
Okay. Do they have to give up their primary care?
No,
They don't have to.
no. So
I'm sorry, I'm just going to repeat the question so at home they can hear.
Okay.
The question was whether the cousin, could you repeat it, Kim?
The spouse of the vet is trying to get benefits. Does she have to get connected to the VA medical? And does she have to give up her own primary care that's not a VA doctor?
The latter, no.
Okay.
The
Do you think that picks it up?
Surviving spouse, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay, so a spouse of a veteran, in order to receive the medical benefits, has to then also be enrolled in the medical,
The surviving spouse, I think.
but they can still use their own providers.
So there is
I personally do that. I'm involved. I don't use veterans services, but because of the generation that came before me and sort of made those mistakes, I got enrolled, I got my family enrolled, but I'm not a utilizer of VA medicine.
Okay.
So I think they're either directly or indirectly, we do counter that a lot. Families feel that if they can't do what you're doing, that they will lose their primary doc.
How it overlays with Medicare, I'm not 100% sure on. Like who's the bill payer first? Is it Medicare or is it VA? I wouldn't recall.
Christina, can you repeat that for the people?
Yeah, but I don't know if we have an answer. It's whether or not Medicare or the VA benefits, which would pay first, really.
It is, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
it's a good
I
question.
think the takeaway is what Mike said,
Yeah.
is that first step is get enrolled, and then, that's the gateway to tapping into the benefits sometime in the future.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and just repeating what Tom said, the most important thing is getting enrolled, even if you don't intend to use the VA benefits, so that they're available in the future. But in the interim, Medicare may be the source of
I
payment.
think as a rule of thumb, if it's skilled care,
The question is, how do you apply for Medicare benefits? Yeah,
well, okay, first of all, you need to make sure you are a Medicare beneficiary, which should happen almost automatically when you reach 65 years of age, if you have a work history, or if you are on Social Security disability benefits for 2 years or more. You can opt not to enroll in Medicare when you turn 65, but be very careful, because if you are receiving employer-sponsored medical benefits, then you're okay. But if you're not, for instance, if you're getting COBRA coverage, when that ends and then you try to enroll in Medicare, you're going to get penalized and have a higher premium to pay because you did not enroll when you turn 65.
And my question was not basic Medicare.
No, I'm getting there.
My question
I'm
was
just,
the
in-
advantages that you're talking about.
in order to
Home
get
health care.
home health
Right.
coverage, you have to have had a medical event such that you are getting some type of skilled care first. or therapies. Now, you don't have to be in a nursing home, but something that created your need for skill care. And then as a part of that, it's determined that you need to get the non-skilled care as part of that overall care plan. So that's going to be how it gets triggered. And you can receive that for, longer than 90 days or 100 days, which we tend to think about, the Medicare coverage will be short term. But I think you really need to fight to keep it maintained. And Ken, know what your rights are.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So, well, with respect to Medicaid, I will give a really brief overview, and then Valerie may talk about getting the assessment started. I'm talking primarily about what is called the Aging Waiver Program, which is for care at home. Some of the rules are similar to getting Medicaid help to pay for long-term care in a nursing home, but not all of the rules are the same. And first of all, to get the in-home medical assistance benefits, they look at your gross income, and your gross income cannot exceed, excuse me, I'm going to go to my cheat sheet. It's in the appendix. Here we go. It should be Appendix A.
Got it.
So, appendix, here we are. It's Appendix B in the handout, by the way, to understand. But for the income cap, the individual needing the Medicaid help has a $2,523 a month limitation. If it's a husband and wife for the waiver, they do not look at the income of the spouse who does not need to receive care. Only the income of the spouse who does need care. Okay. It is a gross amount, so it's not, the Social Security that's going into your bank account. It's your Social Security that you see there, plus your Medicare premium. And I'm stressing that because as soon as you hit $1 above the gross amount level, you're considered not eligible. Okay. As far as resources, certain assets are not counted in when they're looking at the resources. The primary one is your home. They're not going to count your home. They don't account in one car. They don't count funds that are in an irrevocable burial account, providing it's a reasonable sum. Okay, and the reasonable sum is set by the state for the county each year. In Delaware County, that is for approximately $15,000 per person, approximate. Okay, unless you can show that your family custom or religious beliefs or some extraordinary circumstances would require a higher amount. And included in that would be such as you want to be buried in the family plot that is in Brooklyn. That is a cost that can be extensive, and we have to prove it. Okay. If you have something that is considered like a business, we'll see that with family-run businesses that still provide some income to the individual, the value of that business is excluded. Otherwise, everything else is looked at, and you're not allowed to have more than, as a single person, $8,000. That is the waiver. Okay. If it's a husband and wife, the amount that is allowed to be kept, there's a minimum and there's a maximum. And the minimum amount is $27,480. Plus what the other spouse can keep, $8,000. So you're really looking at $35,000, a little over 35. That's a minimum. To reach the maximum, they look at all the other assets of that couple. They do not count the IRA, 401k, or retirement account of the spouse who does not need the help, okay? And that's a critical thing to keep in mind. They do count the IRA, 401k, and any retirement of the spouse who does need help. That will be calculated in. Whatever the total is gets cut in half, and they say that the spouse who doesn't need help gets to keep half of that amount. And if that half is above $137,400, that's where you hit the cap, okay? There are things that can be done when a couple on the face of it appear to be higher, such as when the one determined to need nursing facility care, even though it's at home, it's that level, the assets are looked at, cut in half. The amount that is above the maximum of what that community spouse can keep. So let's just assume for the moment they had 100,000, so half is 50. That's what the community spouse keeps. The other 50 could be spent in part to open those burial accounts or enter into pre-arrangements with the undertaker, as long as it is irrevocable. So out of the 50, maybe 30,000 will be used to purchase the funeral for the wife and the funeral for the husband. With the remaining 20, there might be certain debts, credit card debt, outstanding mortgage, that could be used. It cannot be given away. If it's given away, a gift within 5 years will create a period of ineligibility, okay? So that's the overview of the financial, which I'll go into a lot more detail, as I keep saying, in the fall. Because I don't want to mislead you by making you think it's different than it is, okay? And I don't want to make Valerie's job harder as the assessor or the supervisor, the assessor, hitting heads with some of the people that they're coming out to see. So Valerie, do you want to take the hot seat and talk about the assessment process, which is to determine the care that person needs, and to determine in part, do they need the nursing home level of care or not? Because if they don't need that level of care, then they're not going to be eligible for the Medicaid waiver. Do you want to come?
Hello, I am Valerie Simone Spira. I actually just got a promotion, so I am now the unit director of the assessment department and also the link coordinator for the ADRC. So you're looking for an assessment. So you would call into COSA or fax, mail. There's multiple ways. Elaine spoke about it, and all our information is over there on how to contact us. And you're scheduled for one. Our assessor will come out to you. We have an assessment form called Functional Eligibility Determination. It's a 3-day look back. So basically, from the time of the assessment, they're asking you, what has happened these past 3 days? How have you been bathing? How have you been dressing? How have you been feeding yourself? Can you walk? Do you need assistance with that? Are you continent of bowel and bladder? They'll ask a couple of cognitive questions, and they'll ask, there's also a section where they're asking about, have you had like your flu shot and all that. Mainly what this form is looking at is what your functional abilities are. You're either going to come out nursing facility ineligible or nursing facility clinically eligible. And the nursing facility clinically eligible is what will open you up to that waiver if you meet the financial criteria. So say that you do, that you make under the $2,500, you're married, you make you and your spouse have under the allotted amount, or you're single and you have under the $8,000. What would happen at this point is we would send your case to the Pennsylvania Independent Enrollment Broker. They're an agency that the Pennsylvania government has contracted with to handle your enrollment. They come out, they'll do a CMI with you, which is their overall assessment. It goes a little bit deeper than what ours does because they're looking at what your social and community engagement is also. They will also be asking you for certain documentation, proof of what your assets are, proof of what your income is. They will send those things to the county assistant's office. They will also be sending a physician certification to whatever doctor you've provided to them that will fill it out. Once the county assistant has everything they need, once the doctor's form has come back, then you will be approved and assigned to a managed care organization. The managed care organization assigns you a service coordinator. That person is the person who will determine what your needs are, what the care plan will be. And at that point, they would, talk to you about contacting a home health agency. They would talk about, should you get meals? Should you go to a adult day center? Do you need transportation to any kind of social events? And that's a basic overview of what the process is.
You did a really good job, Valerie. I called you up at the last minute. This is after I said to Valerie, well, Valerie, this time we're not going to use you. We'll do something more thorough in the fall. But you can be there to answer questions. And I pull her up, with it. Thank you.
It's okay.
It made a lot of good sense. It's good. And as you can imagine, there's places where things can, I don't want to use the word fall apart, but there's gaps. Like if the county doesn't get certain information that has been sent, I can't tell you how many times the financial part, when we're helping clients, will send all the statements in that are required and all that. And the caseworker will say, well, I didn't get it. And we'll handle it. We'll get it. I didn't get it. And it gets very frustrating. Or in dealing with Maximus, who's the enrollment broker. But you've all heard me rant already, so I won't take any more. So with that, I think we'll close. We'll stick around for a few minutes for those of you who have questions. I know a few of you asked to talk afterwards. And I appreciate, Mike, you're coming. Of course, Chrissy's stepping up, and Tom, Kim, thank you, and Valerie and Elaine. And you really have given of yourself, and we're all busy. So I'm sure you would like to be out enjoying a good day. Thank you. And also, Holly and
Good.
no, and John, who's held us all together with all the tech stuff. So thank you. Okay. And of course, SCS and Jamie.
When I first started, there was something that came up. Yeah.